It's been 25 years, but after several rumors, Space Jam 2 has finally been released. But that of course begs the question, is it better than the original from 1996? Well, in this video, we are gonna find out. Let the battle commence. Space Jam 1 opens with a young Michael Jordan playing basketball as a kid, and then we see a montage of him playing basketball over the years as the opening credits go by. And I honestly found this quite boring, as it really did overstay its welcome. And in general, the whole opening of the movie with young Michael Jordan and everything about his adult life and his family, I really didn't care about any of that at all, and I just wanted them to go straight to the Looney Tunes. And as for the story for Space Jam 2, the movie opens with a young LeBron James playing basketball as a kid, and we see the troubles that he had playing basketball during his childhood. And then we see a montage of him play basketball throughout the years as the opening credits go by. We spend some time with his family, and yeah, the opening for both of these movies is exactly the same. And in both movies, the basketball players need to help the Looney Tunes from essentially getting killed by the bad guys of their world. Although the stakes are much bigger in Space Jam 2, as if they lose, not only do the Looney Tunes die, but the humans that are abducted into this world will be trapped here forever. That definitely did up the stakes of the movie, and I really did like that. And I'm being completely serious here, but the plot of the second movie, despite being a bigger version of the first movie's plot, it surprisingly made much more sense than the first film, and I really did not expect that from the story for a Space Jam movie. The biggest thing that brings both of these movies down, however, is the human characters. A lot of people talk about how bad Michael Jordan's acting is, and I personally didn't get it. I mean, I know he isn't going to be a great actor in the movie, but when I was a kid, I remember him doing a fine job. Then I saw the movie again to prepare for this video, and boy was I wrong. Michael Jordan is a bad actor, that everyone already knows. But the biggest problem is that he has no charisma. He is just a complete bore to watch, and it feels like the music that accompanies him is trying to compensate for his lack of charm. And the stuff with his family is so freaking boring, and it makes the movie's pacing slow down to a crawl. And it is very jarring when we cut back and forth between the Looney Tunes and the real world. And the stuff in the real world is so freaking boring. Even Bill Murray isn't able to make these scenes any better. Yeah, Bill Murray is in this, clearly as a favor for the producers. Also, I hated his publicist. He kept on trying to get involved, and it was so freaking annoying how petty and needy he was. And Bill Murray showing up towards the end was just so dumb. And just when you think Michael Jordan's acting can't get any worse, it gets so much worse. His reactions to seeing that the Looney Tunes are real is so freaking embarrassing. He doesn't react to anything. This normal human man is seeing real life cartoons that are talking to him, interacting with him, and even squeeze him into a basketball, and his response,
"You guys making a big mistake. Bugs Bunny. You're a cartoon, you're not real,"
is non-existent. Even his friends don't react when he gets sucked into a golf hole. Even his kids don't react like it's a big deal when they see Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck in their house at the middle of the night. Although I gotta say, when I was a kid, I felt sorry for the basketball players that lost their basketball talent, especially when these little shits just embarrass one of them. I honestly thought this was very cruel, but it did lead to arguably one of the best jokes of the movie when all the players look for some guidance and wisdom.
"I see aliens. They force their way inside your bodies. They need your talent to win a basketball game against Bugs Bunny. I also see Michael Jordan being sucked down a golf hole by furry creatures."
That's it. We're out of here.
But they did get their talents back in the end.
Look at that. Touch it.
Yeah, you guys have tried everything. The only chance you have now at regaining your talent is if you all grab hold of Michael Jordan's ball. As for the characters in Space Jam 2, well, first of all, just like Michael Jordan, LeBron James is not an actor, and these two are honestly the worst actors of both movies. Now, LeBron James did start out pretty okay to me. I liked how he tells his son not to get distracted by video games. This directly ties into his decision as a kid to give up on getting distracted by video games and commit to his basketball career. So the Nintendo product placement from earlier actually managed to incorporate itself into the story and character development, so that was pretty good. That being said, LeBron James' tutoring is very dry and boring, and also, his son is not just randomly wasting time playing games, he is creating his own basketball game. You can make a career out of making a surprisingly advanced video game like that. You can even become a dirty company that tries to push gambling to children, but his father just tells him to focus on traditional old basketball. So as much as the movie tries to tie these two story elements together, there is a major difference, that being that one was getting distracted and wasting their time, whereas the other was using their time effectively. So they essentially use a very dated version of the story where the father wants the son to follow in his footsteps, but the son wants to do something else. This is a very dated storyline, and the movie doesn't do anything new with it here. But I will say, that as dull as LeBron James's live action performance was, his voiceover performance was actually much better. Not perfect, he still misses the mark several times, but he certainly puts a lot more effort into his vocal performance and actually emotes. So much so that I was disappointed when it went back to live action. Although I gotta say, I really didn't like his son in this movie. This little shit trusts this suspicious as hell stranger over his father. And not only that, he says to his dad during the cyber basketball game from hell,
He's manipulating you.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
What you
why
say,
you-
man?
I'm playing basketball. I thought you'd be happy.
Thought you'd be happy.
Tom.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
"You wanted me to play basketball, I thought you would be happy." Well, I don't know if you noticed, you little shit, but you have all been abducted into this world against your will, including the rest of your family. Now is not the time to play basketball and to bring your father issues out here and act like your father's the one being unreasonable. The movie is trying to say that it's down to ignorance, but it honestly just comes across as foolishness. And throughout the movie, this just made me root against this character in all of his endeavors. It's forced just to get these two to play basketball in the film's climax. And yeah, this was probably the most illogical part of the story, and that's saying a lot. Also, his son beating his father doesn't mean anything because his son is playing the rules of a basketball game that he invented. His father doesn't even know what the rules are, and he thinks that winning this actually counts as proving himself. Again, another sign of a little shit. And here's another. He misses the goal, but this character moves the goal for him, and he gets one in, and he's laughing like, yeah, I won. You'd think he wouldn't want to prove himself by cheating, but apparently he does. Again, he's a little shit, and yet he persists on acting like he is so awesome. Honestly, when his son got yelled at the end, I actually thought that was the discipline that he deserved for his stupidity. So when you get down to it, the story is much better in Space Jam 2, as it's much more involved, it surprisingly makes a lot more sense, and it felt like there was a lot more going on which helped keep my attention. The problems with the characters, however, I would argue there are even more of them in Space Jam 2, but that being said, I was more invested with these human characters, far more than I was with any of these human characters. And although LeBron James does not look as iconic next to the Looney Tunes as Michael Jordan did, I did have a better time following him throughout this movie, especially when he was animated for a good portion of the film. So taking all of that into account, the movie with a superior story and human characters is Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. Now, when we first enter the cartoon world, I couldn't help but smile when I saw the classic Looney Tunes characters, especially when I saw Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and seeing all of these Looney Tunes characters together blew my mind as a kid. This was Avengers Endgame to me, and even watching them all together now as an adult is really fun and brings back tons of memories. The joke when Daffy comes out onto the stage and everyone stops cheering was so hilarious. That's classic Looney Tunes right there. And it goes all Suicide Squad at one point when another Sylvester tries to eat his smaller teammate in the middle of the mission. And when the Looney Tunes start to bring their cartoonish slapstick to the match, that's when it got really funny to me. All of their slapstick has their own personality to them, and it was actually a lot of fun. Some of them didn't work though, but as a kid, I really enjoyed this stuff. And when I saw this part, I always thought it was the characters trying to act like the Men in Black. But now that I'm older, I know now that it actually was Pulp Fiction. Although I do think Men in Black actually would have been funnier, as they are going up against aliens. I also liked Bugs Bunny's introduction much better in the first movie. In the second movie, he is full on crazy and the slapstick is not funny. Now the slapstick was not great in the first movie, but it managed to maintain some of the classic slapstick from the golden age of animation. And it was much better than the slapstick in the second film. Now that's not to say that the slapstick in the second movie never worked. It did, but it's all slapstick that we have seen done much better. And I don't like it when the Looney Tunes talk the modern lingo just to pander to the kids.
This dude is a hater.
Haters gonna hate.
And I also didn't like it when the Looney Tunes try to act like rappers. Why do movie studios keep forcing raps into kids' movies? It's like they think they are being hip and cool for the kids, but really it's not. And they don't seem to learn from this for some reason. And then when the characters decide to use their slapstick comedy to win the game, this is where you can go all out with the slapstick comedy, and it was very underwhelming in the second film. I was expecting it to be fast-paced and fun like the scene they had earlier when they were playing against each other, but it was just mundane, slow, and nowhere near as fun as it could have been. And I gotta say, the first Space Jam movie did a better job with the slapstick in the climax. Now going by all that, you'd think that I hate everything about the Looney Tunes in Space Jam 2, Well, I really don't. Something that immediately stood out to me was that in the first Space Jam, we are only dealing with the Looney Tunes world. But in Space Jam 2, although the focus is primarily on the Looney Tunes world, we also get to explore other worlds. I love the part where they went to the DC universe. The only problem is that they went there and left very quickly, but I thought the scene was very clever. And the scenes where they were recruiting the other Looney Tunes characters from other Warner Brothers properties was actually a lot of fun, and I was really enjoying myself. The Rick and Morty cameo also put a big smile on my face. The Matrix one, however, felt cheap and chopped together, but besides that, the rest were really good. All in all though, what's very impressive is that they didn't just randomly throw all of these Warner Brothers properties together lazily. It actually felt like this is what you would want to see if the Looney Tunes crossed over into these other Warner Brothers properties. And when it cut back to the real world, it wasn't bad and boring like it was in the first movie, because these scenes were over very quickly, and it would also cut to Don Cheadle, who, I gotta say, was really funny to watch in this. He's just not as memorable a villain as the little aliens and the Danny DeVito mob boss were, and although his plans are better, he didn't come off as aggressive either. But that being said, I am genuinely surprised that Don Cheadle put this much work into a Space Jam movie. He certainly put in a lot more effort than the rest of the live action characters did. He almost feels like an adult version of his character from Fresh Prince. Don Cheadle can actually be very funny. If you watch him in the Oceans movie, he is really funny in those films, but as soon as he ended up in the MCU movies as Rhodey, he has always acted like he has a stick up his ass. And to watch him fully loosen up in this movie again was a very nice return to form to me. And even when he was not in it, there were still a lot of jokes that worked in the film. For example, and I am not gonna dare ruin this scene, but Michael Jordan has a cameo, and it was one of the smartest scenes in the entire movie. So I enjoyed the animated characters in both of these films, but if I'm being honest, the classic hand-drawn animation, the better slapstick, and the overall vibe from the Looney Tunes was much better in the first movie. They made me laugh a lot more, and in general, I enjoyed my time with the Looney Tunes more in the original film. So the movie with the superior interpretation of the Looney Tunes is the first Space Jam. I'm surprised that there are a lot of people who are protective towards the first Space Jam and say that Space Jam 2 is terrible and doesn't even compare to the original. And don't get me wrong, I get being nostalgic towards the first movie, I'm nostalgic towards it too, but I'm not protective over it. I can clearly tell what kinds of movies these are and which one did a more creative job with this premise, which, when you get down to it, is just a glorified commercial. And given the way they incorporate their various properties, I feel like Space Jam 2 went above and beyond what the first movie did. And honestly, ever since there were rumblings of this movie being considered and then being made, I expected far worse than what we actually got. And for what we did get, the slapstick is nowhere near as good as it was in the original movie, but the story, the characters, the utilization of all of these Warner Brothers IPs, the more sophisticated basketball game, I thought it was done surprisingly well. Now that doesn't make the movie good, but at the very least, it does make it worth a watch. That is, if you know what you're getting yourself into. It's time for the scores. Space Jam 1 gets an average 5 out of 10, and Space Jam 2, A New Legacy, gets an above average 6. When it's being a movie about the Looney Tunes playing basketball to save themselves from a lifetime of stand-up comedy, it can be fun, but as soon as it's about Michael Jordan and any of the human characters, I really couldn't care less, and the movie becomes really boring. The Looney Tunes and the human characters in the second movie, however, felt a lot more balanced, and there was never a time where I started to get fed up of what I was watching, although the 2-hour runtime for this movie is unforgivably long. Also, I gotta ask, are the Looney Tunes even big anymore? I mean, those of us that grew up with the Looney Tunes will forever remember them, but newer generations of kids, do they even know who characters like Bugs Bunny are? Because as far as I'm concerned, the Looney Tunes have only been living on in my memories of them, not with any modern cartoons of them. The only recent thing that they have done is have a show on HBO Max, but prior to that, I can't even remember them being on TV for a very long time. It's also worth noting that none of these iconic characters in the background are played or modeled after the original actors. They are recorded with different actors, and they are fun to go back and spot. Oh, and I would happily take this basketball game over the shit NBA 2K games that we get nowadays. The final thing I'll say is that the difference between Michael Jordan and LeBron James is that with LeBron James, I actually feel that he cares, and although he's not doing a great job, I don't really blame him for that, because you can tell that he is trying his best. With Michael Jordan, however, it looks like he's not trying at all. But again, maybe that's not his fault either. They're basketball players after all, and not actors, and I think we should take that into account before we criticize their performances. So overall, both of these aren't necessarily good movies, but they provide the exact kind of entertainment that you would expect, and whichever one you prefer in the end really comes down to you. And now it's time to give a thanks and mention to those who posted the hashtag LetTheBattleCommence fist bump, as well as including the caption movie or film critic Eric Carter to the post. Well done to everyone who made those posts. They were all fantastic. And Skullman, I have looked at all of your requests, and I can tell you that one of them may happen. If you want to have your post featured at the end of a future Versus video, then do exactly as these Instagram posts did. As always, please do give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, as it really does help in getting my channel noticed. And be sure to follow me on Instagram. And if you donate just $1 a month on Patreon, not only will you be supporting the channel, but you will gain access to all of my trailer reactions, including the Book of Boba Fett, Hawkeye, Scream 5, Home Sweet Home Alone, Morbius, Matrix Resurrections, What If, and much more. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I will see all of you next time. Take care.